NFL Week 5 is upon us, and I have big plays lined up for you guys in this video, along with a great teaser, which once again, it cashed last weekend, and the first parlay of the season. It's going to be a great video. This video is going to be a little bit shorter than last time out. Last time out, we got the 30 minutes. I'm trying to keep it within the 20-minute mark and give you guys as much information as possible. Last week, the video did well. Rams, I told you guys, was my $10,000 play. That one. Covered the Steelers. That one as well. Arizona Cardinals, I didn't take it as a play, but I talked about it, teasing it, which they ultimately ended up covering that as well. We spoke about the Vegas Raiders, which lost by 1, but we ultimately took him in that teaser that I gave you. And then we spoke about the Cowboys very briefly, which won that game. So far this season, to start off, we are 10-2 and $31,000 worth of profits. The teasers have been money. Now, the teaser that I posted on YouTube last week, I did not give out as a VIP play, so you guys do not see it here. But ultimately, over the last month and a half, we have been dominant in every sport, and we're going to continue to do the same thing this week, guys. Now, let's get to the money. If you guys are winning, growing, expanding, share the show with a couple buddies that want to learn about NFL, that want to learn how to win and how to actually profit doing this. And I'll give you guys a quick lesson before we start off with the NFL video. Make sure you guys are betting 3 to 5% of your bankroll per bet. 3 to 5%. That means if you have $1,000, you should be betting $30 to $50 per play, and you're risking that amount per play. That's how you bet, and that's how you grow correctly. Not betting more than that. More than that is just reckless, because it'll take 10 to 5 games to wipe you out. Whereas you're betting 3 to 5%, it takes a lot more games, and the statistical probability of that is pretty unlikely for you to lose that many games in a row. So you're protecting your downside by controlling your risk. And a lot of you guys have been asking me that question, so I wanted to cover that right away. If you guys are not in my VIP just yet, join it. Remainder of the year pass, 2 passes remaining. This gets you the plays for the remainder of the year. Week and month pass also available, guys. Now, let's start off at the top. We got to know what's been going on in the season to really attack this NFL Week 5. Right now, first thing I like to look at, guys, is the offensive line ranking. If you have a good offensive line as a team, you can run the ball and you can pass the ball, and that means you have a good offense. If you have a bad offensive line, it's really hard for you to win games. Even if you're playing bad defenses, if you do not have protection for your quarterback and for your running back, it's very, very limited when it comes to the play calling. Right now, Denver Broncos lead the way, and I want you guys to read the following. Red text equals weakest links when I continue scrolling down. Buffalo Bills, they have some weak links and Torrance in the mark on the right side. Philadelphia Eagles, Steen, played pretty bad last week, but they're sitting still top 3. Arizona Cardinals jumped up 8. One of the biggest jumps from last season when it comes to offensive line. They protected the quarterback really well. Colts still at the top. What I'm going to do right now is transition a little bit faster so you guys can see exactly who's at the top. Los Angeles Rams, Detroit Lions, Falcons sitting 10th. Ravens really went down after that game versus the Chiefs, which we also covered. I gave you guys the Chiefs in that game one as well. Commanders, Jaguars. I'm going to scroll to the bottom. I like to see who's at the bottom, who's gone down, what injuries happened. And right now, we know the Bengals are going to be at the bottom. Texans, Titans are going to be there as well. Raiders, 29th right there. Browns, Dolphins sitting 27th. New Orleans Saints sitting 26th. Panthers sitting 25th. Giants sitting 24th, Bears sitting 23rd. Let's look a little bit into NFL power rankings because this stood out to me. The Saints are sitting dead last. And keep that in mind because it's a game we're going to cover here today. Tennessee Titans 31st, 30th Jets, Cleveland Browns 29th, 28th Bengals. And as you guys can see the list going on. And I like to look at power rankings and read into it a little bit to see if there's any injuries that I'm not taking into account or any changes in particular that I have not seen just yet. PFF gives you guys all this information. As you guys can see, Buffalo, Eagles, Chiefs, Lions, Packers sitting at the top. I think this is a little bit of an overreaction, in my opinion. I think Kansas is not that team just yet. They probably will be closer to playoff time. But right now, that win versus the Ravens does not mean too much to me. And I know some of you guys are going to say that that's BS and it's a big win because it's a big rivalry, but to me it's not. Now let's transition to the last part that I like to look at, and it's defensive lines. If you have a good defensive line, you're going to cause trouble to the opposing quarterback. Browns, that's what they've been thriving on. Their offense has been shit, but they've been able to stay in some of these games, some because of that defense. Rams, Texans, Packers, Lions, Giants, Seahawks, Eagles, Bills. At the bottom, you got the Dolphins, right? The Dolphins have been struggling significantly when it comes to the defense. Chiefs also sitting at the bottom. They're sitting at the bottom, Saints, Ravens, Bears, Bengals, Buccaneers, Cowboys, Vikings. And a little bit of a surprise to see the Buccaneers and the Chiefs in this position right now because their defenses have been pretty good. But it's also not all about the defensive line. If you have good linebackers, good safety, good cornerbacks that could protect, that could cover the wide receivers, that adds to the defense, guys. So Dolphins pretty much sitting at the bottom. Now, let's transition over to game number 1 that I'm looking at for today. Here are the lines. The opening lines based on DraftKings BetMGM's information is not out just yet because today is Wednesday, October 2nd. So, actually, Thursday, October 2nd. So today is Thursday Night Football, a game that I'm not going to cover. I do not like that game by any means. So the games that you guys are going to get here are all for Sunday and Monday Night Football. Game number one that stood out to me, Eagles versus the Denver Broncos, and most likely the play of the weekend, the best game of the weekend, in my opinion, right? Best line, best two matchups, two top power-ranked teams playing in Philadelphia. This line opened up at -5.5 in favor of the Eagles, and it's now sitting at 3.5. A big push down. 2 points down. It still hasn't gone to 3, which is that key number. If it goes to 3, that's pretty telling to me because that's a field goal, right? Now the Eagles have to win by a field goal, and they push instead of 3.5 winning by a field goal and still losing. So that's why it's a key number. Money and support right now all over the Eagles. As you guys can see right here, 70% on the bets going to them, 69% of the cash to handle. On the spread, going to the Eagles. On the money line, everybody's on them. -200 seems pretty cheap to take the Eagles at home, and the public sees that. 88% of the bets and 88% of the handle going to the Eagles, yet the line pushed down. So we're seeing reverse line movement in this situation. Vegas is respecting Denver Broncos in this spot. Now let's look into strength of schedule, and let's look at EPA per pass and EPA per run. Overall strength of schedule, the Eagles lead the way. Their strength of schedule so far is ranked 6th compared to the Denver Broncos at 22nd. That's a big gap. Now, EPA per pass, an area where the Eagles lead. 0.02 compared to -0.10. That's EPA per run, excuse me. EPA per pass is an area the Broncos do lead. 0.09 to 0.01. Now, ultimately, Eagles have faced a tougher schedule, and that's something that we want to keep in mind. Injuries right here has not populated based on PFF just yet. So we're going to transition to the stats that I like to pay attention to when I'm looking at these games, which is yards per game, an area that Denver leads right here, 354.5 to 251.5. Offensive efficiency, I like to look at third down conversion. Very important stat. If a team can convert third downs consistently, they're going to continue the drive, and that's very important. And this is an area where Philadelphia thrives a little bit more than Denver. They convert the third down conversions 41.82% of the time compared to 39.22. Red zone scoring efficiency, another area that Philadelphia is actually pretty dominant compared to the Denver Broncos. They have converted that red zone to touchdowns 100% of the times, a big part because of the tush push. Whereas Denver is 66.67. Defensive side of things, I believe Denver has the best defense in the league, and they do lead in these two categories, third down conversion percentage and opposition red zone scoring percentage. Denver leads the way. In the red zone scoring touchdown for the defensive side, a bigger gap. Third down conversion, not that big of a gap. Turnover margins, the Eagles lead the way with 1 turnover per game as of right now this season. That's fantastic. And when their offense doesn't show up, their defense does, and that's what's kept that record undefeated, guys. Injuries right now, there is some pending injuries for Denver that we want to keep attention to, especially for Bonito and Singleton, two key pieces in this defense. Right now, both these players were full in participation in practice, which leads to believe that they're going to play. Carter, limited in practice, I believe. Limited in practice, a key player for this Philadelphia's Eagles defense, guys. So for this game, I like Denver. I like Denver right now. They're sitting at 3.5 in most books. I'd buy it to 4 just for the safety of that, getting that hook in case the Eagles win by 4. But ultimately, I see a very close game and an angle where Denver could potentially win this game and Eagles pick up their first loss of the season. Now, again, we're going to factor this in closer to game time. We want to see the injury report. We want to see the money and percentage. But this is one of those games that I'm looking at for this weekend, guys. Let's transition to game number 2 that I like for this Sunday, guys. And I'm going to cover this one, and the next one is an underdog winner, and then we'll transition to the teaser and parlay. Now, the game that I'm going to cover is a game that I've taken the last 2 weeks, and a team that's been pretty profitable over the last 2 weeks, and it's the Dolphins, guys. They cashed for us on Monday, and then last weekend as well versus the Bills plus 14, they won. And let me explain why. This line opened up in favor of the Panthers at -1.5 and is flipped to the Dolphins at -1 right now in majority of the books, with Tyreek Hill being injured. That to me is telling. Now let's transition on to money and support. Money right now on the Panthers, especially on the spread. 39% of the bets and 57% of the handle. Right now, sharper money is going to the Carolina Panthers. Now remember, today is Wednesday. This game starts in 4 days. When you look at the money line, money is going into the Dolphins. 62% of the bets and 59% of the handle. So the line movement, in the sense, it makes sense. Money's going to the Dolphins and the books are adjusting. Nonetheless, with Tyreek Hill being out, I expect the public perception to be to fade the Dolphins. Now, we want to pay attention to that closer to game time. Now, let's transition to the stats. Strength of schedule, really even. Dolphins sitting 23rd, Panthers sitting 25th. When we look at the EPA per pass, an area where the Dolphins lead, both negative, but minus 0.02 compared to minus 0.08. EPA per pass, an area where the Dolphins also lead. They're dead even compared to minus 0.08 for the Panthers, and the Dolphins have had a tougher schedule coming into this game. Now, remember, at the end of the day, Panthers are at home in this game. Dolphins right now, Waller questionable, a key piece for that offense last week. Hill out, Bonner, another player that we want to pay attention to. Now, the Panthers, Hubbard is questionable, and that's their main running back, and a big reason why this line could have moved as well. We want to pay attention to these key injuries. Now, ultimately, the line movement favors the Dolphins. Strength of schedule and EPA per run and EPA per pass favor the Dolphins. Now, let's transition to the stats that matters. Yards per game, Carolina does lead in this situation. Offensive efficiency, Dolphins lead. Third down conversion and red zone scoring touchdowns, they do lead, but again, they're missing Tyreek Hill, which was a big component as to why they lead in this situation. When we look at the defensive side of things, surprisingly here, the Dolphins lead in one area, and that's opposition red zone scoring. Compared to opposition red zone conversion, that's an area where the Carolina Panthers do lead, and by a good amount. Turnover margin, Carolina leads as well. Now, Dolphins have been playing a little bit better. Last week, we can argue that they got lucky, or they are playing better defensively and caused a couple more turnovers. So ultimately, I see them playing better. Now, I want to show you guys a cool graph here because this was from last season. And this shows you guys what happened exactly last season with the Dolphins. And when we see the first half of things, right, the first 4 or 5 weeks, they're passing short left, short middle, short right, deep left. All their passing, their completion yards were rather low, and the yard completions are right here. As the season progressed, they got better and better and better and better and better. And right now we're entering week 5. An area where last year they were still struggling. They started good, went bad a little bit, and ultimately ended up climbing up. I see the Tyreek Hill injury as a situation that could benefit this team. They're going to give more opportunity to this kid Washington that's a stud. Waddle is going to be the main component. Waller needs to play in order for this game to be a play ultimately. But I do like the Dolphins in this spot, guys, especially if money and support is going to the Panthers. We want to pay attention to that closer to game time, but a good angle to pay attention to in a buy low spot for a team that lost their best player. Now, to one of the games that I love the most for this Sunday's NFL Week 5 slate, guys. We got the Dallas Cowboys going to New York to visit the Jets. This line opened up in favor of the Cowboys at minus 1.5, as you guys can see right here. And it's at minus 2.5 in all the books in Vegas right now. So the line has gone up in favor of the Cowboys. Money and support is all over the Cowboys. As you guys can see right here, when it comes to the spread, they're attracting 82% of the bets and 58% of the cash on the money line, though. Very similar to Philadelphia Eagles. 86% of the bets and 84% of the handle. Nonetheless, the line has pushed up. It hasn't gone in the favor of the Jets. So Vegas is adjusting. There's no weird line movement there by any means. Now, one thing that I want to cover before we start with this analysis is the following. We know that CeeDee Lamb is out. He's injured. And their main go-to guy right now is George Pickens. Now, where does the New York Jets team thrive in? It's not offensively. We know that, but it's defensively. They have a really good defensive team. And they actually have one of the better defenders in the entire league when it comes down to lockdown percentage in Sauce Gardner. Their quarterback that's going to be tied to Mr. George Pickens. Now, I'm going to emphasize that to start this analysis because it's very important. If George Pickens is covered well by the best defender, they're going to rely on Jake Ferguson, the tight end, and other players that's not CeeDee Lamb. So that limits them a little bit, especially when they're playing in New Jersey. Now, ultimately, let's look at the stats and break this game down. Strength of schedule, very similar. Cowboys sitting at 8th, as you guys can see right here. Jets sitting at 9th. When we look at the EPA per run right now, Cowboys lead the way and by a good amount. Minus 0.01 compared to minus 0.15. And the EPA per pass, same deal. Minus 0.02 compared to 0.16 positive for Dallas. Dallas offensively leads the way, guys. They're ranked 5th compared to the Jets at 24th. And on the defensive side of things, it's not like the Jets are ranked that much higher than the Cowboys in the spot. Overall, the Cowboys are ranked higher. When we look at injuries, though, this is a cause for concern, especially because a lot of these players are important. Turpin, very important, especially Lamb being out. Sanders, important. Diggs, their cornerback, one of the main one. Hooker as well. Very important. They are questionable. Players that we want to make sure are playing or not playing at the moment that we're going to take this play. When we look at the Jets, they're coming in a little bit more healthy. Johnson, the main questionable player there with his leg, another key player that we want to pay attention to when we're looking at this game. When we look at the stats for this game, Yards per game, Dallas leads the way. When we look at the offensive side of things, they lead the way as well, like we just covered. Offensively, Dallas is the better team, converting third downs 42.55% of the time compared to 31.11 for New Jersey. Red zone scoring touchdowns 66.67 compared to 60. The gap there is not that crazy, but ultimately Dallas does lead the way. On the defensive side of things, the Jets lead, right? Cowboys easily have one of the worst defenses in the entire league right now. 58.18% of the time they're allowing third down conversion compared to 34.69 for the Jets. Opposition red zone scoring 56.25 compared to 64.71 in favor of the Jets. And turnover margins, it is in favor of the Dallas Cowboys in the spot. Now, ultimately, we covered the situation with CeeDee Lamb being out. We also have a potential wide receiver from the Cowboys, Turpin, out. Their offense might be limited coming into this game. And one thing that I want to add on to this Jets team that's 0-4, let's look at their losses. They lost to the Steelers week 1, a game that they easily could have won. They got dominated by the Bills. Let's leave that there. Buccaneers, a game that they could have won as well. They lost it pretty much at the end. And when we look at the Dolphins game, turnovers crushed them that game. Had they scored that run where the guy fumbled it in the 1-yard line, I believe the Jets would have won that game because that changed the momentum of that game. So the Jets are there, and they're due for a win in this spot, team. And I like him ultimately, right? When we look at the head-to-head in this situation, the data is not that important because they barely play each other, but we can grab that New York, the Jets, have won in their home court both times that they've played. Again, not something that's crazy important, but ultimately, I do see an edge here for the Jets. I like him at that plus 2.5, and I like them on the money line. Ultimately, we play a little bit more conservative just to pick up the W. I don't mind biting the juice, getting it to 3 plus 2. We win that play, guys. But I love the Jets. To me, this is an underdog that has a very high chance of winning this weekend. Last 2 plays, and in this segment, you're going to get FSU versus UM prediction for this Saturday's main play for college football. But along with that too, you're going to get the last play that I really like. And this one's also for me in the rankings of potential plays for this weekend. And it's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers versus the Seattle Seahawks. This line opened up in favor of the Seahawks at -1.5 and now sitting at -3.5 due to injuries. Money and support. Right now it's a pros versus Joes situation. The public loves the Buccaneers at 3.5. But the Sharps are pounding the money on the Seahawks right now. 78% of the handle compared to 36% of the bets. On the money line, very similar situation. The public loves Tampa Bay. They love Baker. They love this team that's been dominant this entire season. But the Sharps understand that Seattle is where the value is. Now, why is that? A big reason is because Bucky Irving is out this weekend. And that's a key offensive player for this team. Along with that, too, they already lost Mike Evans. So they're in a situation where offensively they're going to be tight, but defensively they are great and they're a very good coach team. Now let's talk about strength of schedule. Seattle 28th compared to 17th for the Buccaneers. When we look at EPA per run, an area where the Buccaneers lead -0.16 compared to -0.21, and EPA per pass, an area where the Seattle Seahawks lead 0.20 compared to 0.11. Guys, we spoke about injuries for Seattle. There are some questionable players that we want to pay attention to, but it's not in the magnitude that the Buccaneers have in this situation. When we look at the splits, we got to factor in that the Bucs have had a tougher schedule, but Seattle does lead the majority of the categories. When we look at yards per game, Tampa Bay does lead in that situation, but not by much, by 3 yards. When we look at the offensive side of things, third down conversion and red zone scoring efficiency, in the third down conversion, Seattle leads. Not by much, by 2%. Now, when we look at the red zone scoring possession, touchdown-wise, this is a big gap. 36.36% compared to 64.29%. And now you factor in they're without Bucky Irving. They're going to probably rely on White a good amount. That is the backup running back. And they're also without Mike Evans. Godwin is back, but remember, he's coming back from an injury. He's not the same player. When we look at the defensive side of things, an area where Tampa Bay does lead a majority of the categories, but they don't lead in red zone scoring efficiency. 46.15% of the time, Seattle's allowing a touchdown compared to 60% for the Bucs. But in the opposition third down conversion, it's an area where Tampa Bay does lead. And then turnover margin, Seattle leads. They're also at home. They're also at home in this situation. Let's see if there's a significant edge at home and away. Over the last 2, Seattle has won, but they haven't faced each other over the last 3 years. So again, that data is not too important. I like Seattle in that spot, team. I really do. I'd bite the money line. I know it's heavy, but we just want to pick up a W. If Vegas pushed it from 1.5 to 3.5, they surpassed that 3. That's a critical number. Now Seattle has to win by more than a field goal, and majority of the games end by 3, 7, or 4 points. So this is critical. That movement from 3 to 3.5 is very pivotal in this situation, and I like the Seahawks in this spot, guys. Now, let's transition over to college football, and then we'll get to the teaser, and along with that, to the little parlay I'm going to throw for you guys. Now, we got Miami versus Florida State. And before we start this off, I just want to mention that I did go to Florida State, and I'm a big-time Florida State fan. So this game for me goes against my rules to take it. But I still want to break it down because I see an angle here. This line opened up in favor of Miami at -6, and now it's sitting at -4.5. Money and support going a little bit more towards Miami. Very similar situation to the Tampa Bay game versus Seattle. The public loves Miami. 63% of the bets on the spread, 74% of the bets on the money line. But when you look at where the money's coming in right now, it's on FSU. 55% of the spreads handle is going to FSU, and on the money line, very similar situation. Now, again, this game starts in 2 days. So we want to pay attention to this closer to game time. Now, this line opening up at -6 and going to -4.5 is a line movement that you got to pay attention to, especially if money really does come in favor of Miami in that situation. Now, let's talk a little bit about the situation of this game. Strength of schedule, Miami leads the way. When we look at EPA per run, FSU leads by a good amount, and EPA per pass, they also lead by a good amount. But we also got to factor in Miami has faced a tougher schedule. Now, when we look at that game versus UF, the score, 26-7, magnifies because it's a big gap. But if you watch that game, it was pretty close to the very end. And defense won that game for UM. Ultimately. Now, along with that, too, they are on a longer break preparing for this game because they had a bye week last week. So that's an edge in regards to UM. Florida State played last Friday or Thursday, I believe, right? So they have a good amount of time to prepare for this game as well. But they lost versus Virginia. They went to Virginia, first test away. Playing away for college players is a tough task. But it was a game that, to me, sets them up perfectly for this game because they understand that if they want to make the playoffs, they have to win this game. They just lost to Virginia. Now they have to beat UM in order to maintain that top 12 spot. Because if they lose to UM and they lose to Virginia, ultimately I doubt, and they doubt they're going to make it in the top 12 spot. And this team came running against Alabama at home. They're going to have the home crowd behind them. And let's transition a little bit into the stats for this game. Yards per game, an area where FSU leads. Offensively, they lead the way in majority of the categories as well. The gap's not huge, but they do lead the way. Defensively, the one gap that stands out is opposition third down conversion, an area where Miami does lead a little bit better, right? 36.36% for FSU, allowing third down conversions compared to 26.83%, and they also lead in opposition red zone scoring and turnover margin in this situation. FSU has won the last two in FSU. The last two in FSU, and they're 3-1 entering this game. Remember, last year for FSU was a complete wash. That team was nowhere to be found. This year, they have a new quarterback, Castellanos. They have new energy, and I like him at home to cover this spread of 4.5 and a potential underdog alert, guys. Again, just wanted to give you guys that breakdown. It does fit the system. It's not me just going with FSU because I'm an FSU fan, even though I am an FSU fan. But ultimately, the main play will be NFL in regards to this video. Now, let's transition into the teaser, guys. The teaser for this weekend, what are we going to run with? First one, Jets. Jets. If you get it at 6 points, you're catching that at 8.5. Denver Broncos, 6 points, you're catching that at 9.5 points. So the two teams that I'm adding to this teaser. Seattle Seahawks, I'm adding them as well. If you're getting them at a 6-point teaser, you're catching them at +2.5. And that's the 3-game teaser that I'm going to run with this weekend. It's not going to be a 4. It's going to be a 3 this time out. And I like it like that, guys. So that's the teaser. Parlay-wise, very small percentage. Very, very small percentage. Do not go crazy on this. FSU, +5. Dolphins, money line. Denver, +4. Seattle Seahawks, money line. And then, that's it. We got 4. The 4 games that I covered, that's the ones that we're taking. Every game that I covered, we're going to take it. Remember to buy that hook. And ultimately, let's win the week. Remember, the most important play is going to be the big play, right? The parlays, the teasers, they're not that big of plays. You win and you grow your bankroll by attacking every day, hitting singles, doubles, and then occasionally hit a home run. But ultimately, Sunday, I'm going to play 1 game, even though I covered 4 for you guys, because that's my system. And it's been working 10-2. I'm okay with going 11-2 instead of 12-2. I will wait for next week or Monday, which Monday has a great game, which I'm going to cover Monday for our analysis when I do the YouTube, guys. So remember, I do the YouTube shows Monday, Tuesdays, and Fridays in regards to free plays. The Fridays are this NFL videos that you're seeing right now. And ultimately, too, guys, if you guys are learning, growing, expanding, share the show. Please do me that solid. I don't run ads on this show. I don't like to do that. And along with that, too, I want to see the show grow, and I want to see some volume in order to continue doing these videos for you guys. So please share the show. Do me that solid, guys. in return of giving you guys this information and some winners, guys. And we're going to beat Vegas this weekend, guys. So let's win this NFL Week 5. Share the show. Lock in your VIP pass so you get the official plays for this weekend. And I'll catch you guys next week.